Hello and welcome to our monthly Body Signals workshop. My name is Dr. Lazar Jancic. I am the principal chiropractor and director here at Leederville Chiropractic Clinic. You're either watching this because you're an existing patient of mine or an existing patient has passed this on to you to watch. So I hope you enjoy either way. Each month we'll be talking about a different theme based on the most commonly asked questions I receive in practice. So also keep an eye out for future workshops. This month is all about recovering from the holidays and detoxing from the holiday season. It's a new year full of hopes and dreams and New Year's resolutions. It's a perfect time for people to catch up with family, travel, indulge in all sorts of foods and drinks, and of course set New Year's resolutions. However, all this often comes with a tremendous amount of stress, leaving you with the holiday hangover and feeling low on energy, often with lots of flus and colds. I've already seen a ton of people sick just in these first few weeks of January. So low energy, tension, spinal aches and pains, and a sluggish metabolism. So in this workshop, we will be going into how and why stress affects your body like this, and of course giving you some tools and strategies to help you detox and start this new year healthier and happier. So let's get into the workshop. You might think this is a bit of a fun or a bit of a joke, but in fact it's actually quite serious, as you'll see in the next slide. Sadly, all this rushing and stress has become the new norm and is creating a lot of suffering in the Western world through burnout and chronic illness. Here's one example of the devastating effects that can take place around this time of year. As you can see, this is a graphic of the cardiac deaths in America between 73 and 2001. And you can pretty clearly see that the deaths spike just during that week between Christmas and New Year's. So why do we see this spike? Well, we know it's stress. It's how you lead your life. But it's definitely not just mental stress. There's different types of stress, and we'll come back to this later. But together, these stresses in our lifestyle are creating incredible suffering and ill health. Many people don't know this, but we are in the middle of a health crisis. We are in the middle of an epidemic of chronic illness. Our average life expectancy may be at its highest, but this certainly has no reflection on our state of health. Here is a quote from one of the most prestigious journals in the world, the Journal of Applied Physiology. And I've found you a quote from this Roberts and Bernard. They say, currently, modern and chronic diseases, including cardiovascular diseases, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and cancer, are the leading killers of westernized society and are increasing rapidly in developing nations. So, what do you think is behind this rise in chronic illness? Do you think it's because there's not enough nurses and doctors, not enough hospitals and technologies, not enough money injected into the healthcare system? Well, every year we've spent more money on drugs, surgery, doctors and nurses, and every year this epidemic of chronic illness has gotten worse. So clearly this can't be the solution. Throughout these workshops, I will be suggesting 3 reasons for the crisis that we are in the healthcare industry. The first of which I'm going to suggest is that we have been starting with the wrong definition of health. I'll come back to the other 2 down the track. So this is what you have been experiencing during the holiday season, probably. exhaustion, colds and flus, headaches, digestive problems, maybe some weight gain, irritability, pain, anxiety, and depression. And when you start the year like this, how is that looking for the remainder of the year? You need to start to realize that all this stress, day in, day out, month in, month out, and over the years leads to more serious chronic illnesses. And that is why what I'm seeing in my clinic and what we're seeing around the world, particularly in the developed nations. This is one reason I'm developing these body signals workshops. I want people to be thinking in terms of body signals. So what are body signals? They are your symptoms, aches and pains. They are your beautiful body trying to communicate with you and get your attention to a problem. They are also just the tip of the iceberg. This is why I love this analogy, because it's how our body works and functions. You need to know that those body signals are just a glimpse of what is happening below. Just like an iceberg, you only see the top 10%. The way you think about symptoms or body signals will drive your choices, which drives outcomes. Please know that your body is incredibly smart and it doesn't do anything by accident. So your aches, pains, and symptoms are your body's attempt to ask for help. Some typical body signals I see in my patients are headaches, aches and pains all throughout the spine and shoulders, tension, pins and needles. During this last few weeks in particular, I've seen definitely lots of flus and colds, gastro, tiredness, and bloating. And instead of listening to these body signals, your body's cry for help, what are people told to do? Keep pushing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Take drugs. Ignore the symptoms. Suck it up. This has become the new normal, and it's a big problem. Now, you should know that our health falls into a spectrum or continuum. As this slide points out, on the left you have death or zero health. And on the right you have perfect or optimum health. Up until now, the definition of health has really been in this point here, the neutral point, where there's no discernible obvious illness or wellness. It's the point of no symptoms. But as we've just learned, symptoms can give us clues as to where we fall on this spectrum. And it's below that point. It's in this region here. This region is not defined really in our current healthcare system. Yet this is the most important component. It's true health. It's optimum health. And this is where the wellness paradigm lives. So have a good look and have a guess where you fall on this continuum. What direction are you headed in? Towards health or away from it? At what speed are you moving? Towards health or away from it? This is why it's critical to understand symptoms, to understand your body signals. You need to learn how to speak body. You need to learn how to interpret the body signals. And once you do, you will start to make better decisions, which will lead to better choices and better behaviors. Have a think about what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve with your overall health? Is it more temporary symptomatic relief? Or are you trying to find your true health and function? The way you think, your belief systems, organizes behaviors, which are your choices, and this leads to your outcomes, the results. This takes us back to our 3 causes of the health crisis. If you remember, number 1 was we needed a new definition of health. Number two is, well, often there is just no personal responsibility for our health outcomes. People think it's um, sickness or illness is just bad luck. It's my genes, it's a genetic condition, my parents had it, my brother has it, or it's just part of aging. When in reality, neither of these are true. And we'll get to reason number three shortly. So what we need now is we need a better premise, a better starting point, or a philosophy. I would like to suggest the following. Number one, healthy is normal. This is normal, not this. Very, very important. Number two, your body is super, super smart. It doesn't do anything by accident. Number three, your nervous system is the master control system. Number four, your spine is like a suit of armor which not only protects your nervous system, but actually is integrated. It's part of your nervous system. And number five, modern life is unnaturally stressful. Again, this is a really important point, and we'll get more into this as we go along. So let's talk a little bit more about stress. Remember, we mentioned the 3 T's. So here they are: thoughts, toxins, and traumas. Let's have a little look at each one. Thoughts. So this is basically your mental and emotional stress. Now, many people tell me this, and you might be thinking it as well. I'm not stressed. I feel fine. But trust me, most of you are way more stressed than you think you are, and you probably don't even know it. It might be things like worry, sadness, loneliness, anxiety. Sometimes it's just being busy all the time. Your brain is constantly thinking what is next. This can be quite a common stress actually. Running around after kids. You know, my daughter is 7 years old. She does drama, violin lessons, swimming, and I just have one. What about people or families that have 2, 3, or more? And again, in the last few weeks, many of you may have experienced a variety of these types of emotional stresses just around the holiday season. Humans are hardwired to protect and govern our 4 limited resources: time, energy, focus, and money. We experience stress when our 4 limited resources are threatened. For example, historically, energy or food was very hard to find, hard to secure, so we were programmed to stress around it. Find food, secure. Everything has changed, however. The pace of our lives is totally unnatural. Demands are extraordinary. Modern life is already unnaturally stressful. Then add in the extra demands of the holiday season, thanks to thoughts, toxins, and traumas, and now you have a compounding effect and stress physiology. Your stress physiology becomes activated. You start to release stress hormones, which have a direct and indirect impact on health and well-being. So now check out this next slide, and we're going to get a little bit more into the stress response. Now it's time for a quick physiology lesson, just to give you an overall picture and a deeper understanding of what's really happening below. I think you're going to find this super, super interesting, so check it out. A few interesting facts. Did you know that every human on this earth is genetically identical to the humans that lived up to and over 6,000 years ago. That means we have the same body, nervous system, physiology as the humans that lived back then. And those people evolved over millions of years to be suited to that type of environment. Also, did you know that the brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and reality? Now, this is pretty important because just by thinking something stressful, your body is going to experience it as if it's happening for real. This is really important because we are not running away from lions and tigers anymore, and we're not hunting mammoths these days, but our body is responding as if we are when we face stresses in the modern world. So these days, of course, we don't have the lions and the mammoths, but our mammoths and lions are getting our family together over the holiday season, or getting all that work done just so you can have a holiday, and then facing the mountain of emails when you come back. Sound familiar? It might be the mortgages, the bills, the frustrating colleagues or bosses. So when you experience these different types of lifestyle stress, your body and brain will respond exactly the same way as if you're facing a hungry tiger face on. Now what happens is you start to activate your sympathetic nervous system, which is your stress response. It's the part of your nervous system that responds to stress. You may have heard of it as fight or flight. And remember, all this is perfectly normal when you're experiencing stress. Perfectly normal. Now we're going to check out this slide which goes into detail about what happens physiologically when you're in the stress response. So check this out. Blood pressure goes up. Heart rate goes up. This is in response to stress. Muscle tone increases. Digestion gets upset. This is because when you're running away from the tiger, you don't need digestion. Reproduction and sex drive is down-regulated. Again, it's not a priority when you're running for your life. Decreased serotonin levels. These are the feel-good hormones. They're decreased. Again, they'll come later, but you don't need them while you're running for your life. Increased sensory system. You become hyper alert because you're literally running for your life. Fear and anxiety goes up. Your immune response is down-regulated. This means shut down or slow down. Again, a white blood cell is not going to help you fight a hungry tiger. You'll need that afterwards, but not while you're running for your life. Insulin sensitivity down-regulated. Blood sugar goes up. Decreased in HDL, which is your so-called good cholesterol. Increased in the LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol. And increased clotting factor. Okay? This is called adaptive physiology. This is how your physiology adapts to any kind of stress response, and it's perfectly normal to help you survive a stressful encounter. The only problem is that we were never designed to experience this on a regular basis. Once you ran away from the tiger and you were safe, all this would be reversed and you would go into a state of parasympathetic nervous system, which is a restful state. And all this would be basically cancelled. However, now, these days, we don't have the downtime, so we are constantly in a state of stress. Now, when you have a look at these individually, blood pressure, heart rate, etc., how is this looking for heart attack, heart disease, and diabetes, and let's face it, a lot of other chronic illnesses? Remember this graph? Do you now have a bit of a greater understanding of why heart incidents, cardiac deaths in particular in this case, peak around this time? This is a super, super stressful time for many, many people, and this is what we're seeing. Following are some tips for getting that emotional stress down. I personally love this traffic light analogy. Some things you can stop doing, others you can slow down with, and others, again, you can start doing. Here are some recommendations on how to start reducing your emotional stress. Number one, choose your attitude. You can't always choose your situation, but you can always choose your attitude or perspective. Not easy, but there's always that choice. Connection, acceptance, and respect. Well, we could do a workshop on each one of these, couldn't we? They're so important. But people are hardwired to require these things. It's learned for survival advantage. Energy exchange. Be mindful of the energy exchanges in your relationships. And remember, good communication is critical. Meditation. This is one of the best ways to slow down, become more present, take time out, and help get out of that fight or flight. It's incredibly powerful, and I would strongly recommend people prioritize this activity. The last one is know your values and the values of those around you. Placing unreasonable expectations on yourself and others only leads to stress and frustration. Sleep is a biggie, isn't it? You have to protect your rhythm, your circadian rhythm. Get those 8 quality hours of sleep, so important. I think early to bed, early to rise is a good rule. Same every day. Your body likes routine. Changing that routine is stressful for your body. Shut off those screens at least 60 minutes before bedtime, particularly LEDs. Looking at those phones before bedtime, it has been shown to disrupt sleep. So that's a big one, a big problem for a lot of people these days. Take a nap, particularly if you're a bit tired. Good old power nap. It's amazing, and it really helps restore those energy levels, gets you back on track. So don't hesitate to have a quick nap. Also, try not to eat before bedtime. For me personally, at least 2 hours before I go to bed is probably the latest I would like to eat. And whenever I follow this rule, I always have a better sleep. So keep that in mind. Now we move on to the second T of sources of stress, and that is toxins. These are your chemical toxins like pesticides, pollution, heavy metals, cosmetics, and even most commercial sunscreens. But probably the greatest source of chemical toxins is our diet. It's not really the scope of this particular workshop to go deeply into diet. I know most of you are overwhelmed with dietary recommendations, often conflicting and confusing. I want you to know all my recommendations are totally backed up by scientific evidence. And on top of that, thousands of years of trial and error. If you're struggling with change, the best is to focus on adding the good stuff rather than removing the bad stuff. But if you're ready for the next step, then removing some of the bad stuff too is fantastic. The main thing is that you need to make change easy and comfortable. So don't torture yourself. Following are some basic tips and tricks I've come across over the years and what has worked for me. You should never be going hungry. It's just not necessary. The battle is often won at the register. If you don't buy it, it's not in the home, it won't get eaten. It's a great rule. I love that one. Don't drink your calories. Sugary drinks and alcohol is included in this category as they are incredibly calorie dense and are toxic to your system. Most of us enjoy a drink here or there, but if you're trying to get healthy or lose weight, this is something you want to monitor closely. Avoid the white stuff. By this I mean sugar and flour. I know the flour might be a bit of a shock to many of you because we've all grown up being told that grains is good for us. Particularly when this means kind of ditching the breads, the pastas, the pastries, all that good stuff. I know. But they're not part of a healthy diet, and they will trigger your stress response. Fill yourself with healthy foods. Let's have a look what that is. Just back to basics. Unlimited vegetables. And I don't mean legumes, I mean vegetables in a technical sense, particularly those green, leafy veggies. That's the best stuff. Plenty of lean cuts of natural meats, fish and eggs. They're always good. On the subject of meat and animal products, this is often a polarizing topic. With regards to quantity of meat, my general advice is listen to your body. As long as you're eating plenty of veggies and low carbs, and I mean the white stuff, meat is all good. But if you're going to be eating meat regularly, really important that you stick to organic grass-fed red meats and organic chicken. Wild kangaroo is a fantastic, cheaper option, and it's very, very sustainable. Fish must be wild. Ask at the store, you might be surprised. For example, no fresh salmon in Australia, well, I shouldn't say Australia, but certainly in Perth, no fresh salmon in Perth is wild. Don't consume fish more than 2 times per week because it is full of heavy metals and you will overdose eating any more than that. Always some fruits. Best to keep the fruits on the lower side in season. And of course, nuts and seeds are great and a good source of fats. I certainly recommend no refined carbohydrates and sugar. In terms of supplements, these are the ones I currently recommend for everybody. Particularly omega-3 and vitamin D are essential nutrients, which means your body needs them to function properly. You can get by without them, but not at a high level of function and health. Probiotics, these are your good bacteria. We'll talk more about these in other topics, but these are the supplements which I recommend for everybody for part of a healthy body, healthy spine. Okay, now we move on to the third T, the third source of stress. And that is traumas. It's your physical injuries. And really, we have macro traumas and micro traumas. This doesn't look good, does it? So macro traumas are your car accidents, sports injuries, slips and falls. These things are obvious physical stressors. They often cause pain and obvious signs of damage, and these can be serious for sure, but they can also cause something that may not be so obvious. These physical injuries lead to spinal decay and degeneration, which chiropractors call subluxations. Subluxation causes loss of movement and something called proprioception, which your brain and body need to be healthy. Subluxation results in negative body signals, which put your brain and body into a state of stress and limit your health potential. Remember the stress response? You don't want anything which is contributing to more stress in your body. And this is what subluxation does. So we'll soon be coming back to subluxations. They're very, very important, especially in a chiropractic context. But you don't have to get into a car accident to get subluxated. Does this look familiar? How many people feel like they're spending way too much time sitting in front of a screen? How about your family, your kids? Do you think that this is probably unhealthy? In many ways, right? Let's talk about one very serious way this is causing a problem for you and your family. Let's talk about micro trauma. Sitting is probably the biggest form of micro trauma. And we now know that sitting is the new smoking. In chiropractic offices, we like to say that sitting for your spine is like sugar for your teeth. How many feel that you are spending way too much time sitting nowadays? What about your kids? Experts agree with you. Modern life is tragically sedentary. We spend way too much time sitting. Those same experts tell us that we are spending the majority of our waking lives sitting, averaging 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is directly related to an increase in obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and statistically a shorter, sicker life. And to make matters worse, we are spending most of that time sitting in front of a screen. This, my friends, is the leading cause of increased stress on our bodies in modern life. Look what this is doing to you. Have you seen your posture lately? How about your children's posture? Here's what we know about posture. It is the window to the spine and nervous system. This is what biophysics experts tell us about posture and mechanical stress on your spine. Basically, our head is like a bowling ball. It's pretty heavy. And it balances, if you look at my mouse pointer over here, it balances on this upper vertebra in your neck. As our posture gets worse and the bowling ball comes further forward from neutral, which is this red line here, there is more and more weight, pounds and pounds of pressure being exerted. So when you're looking down at that mobile phone and your neck is about 45 degrees, you're exerting 42 pounds of pressure throughout your spine, and you're really compressing the spine and the nervous system. You're stretching and forcing these muscles at the back to work extra hard, and these muscles up through here. Everything suffers as your posture gets worse. To understand this further, let's have a brief anatomy lesson. The nervous system is the master system. We kind of touched on that earlier. This is your brain stem, your spinal cord, and all the nerves that exit from the spine. This is your nervous system is basically your communication system for your body. It runs the whole body, keeps you healthy and healing. The nervous system is protected by the bone, which is the spine. The skull is the helmet that protects your brain. The spinal column is the suit of armor that protects your spinal cord. If it stays healthy, communication is optimal. Spinal health is optimal. What happens when communication breaks down? Say in a company, factory, family, communication is everything. If you want a healthy body, then you need a healthy nervous system. And if you want a healthy nervous system, you need a healthy spine. Macro traumas cause damage to your spine and connective tissue, ligaments, muscles, and tendons, which make up the spinal joints. Trauma creates nervous system stress and interference in communication. This changes the information going to and from the body and the brain, interfering with healthy function and healing. This is a condition, as we described earlier, known as vertebral subluxation. Subluxation for short. Here's just a few things that happen when we have a subluxation. There's joint misalignment, soft tissue damage, inflammation and nerve irritation, muscle spasm, loss of movement in the disc, which is what imbibition is, joint fixation, and as a result, as we've said before, with joint fixation comes elevated stress hormones. Again, putting your body in a greater state of stress. This is what subluxation does. Another way you can think of your spine and nervous system is like an electrical fuse box. And a subluxation in this case would be a short circuit. However, when those nerves are supplying all your organs, muscles, joints, and every cell in your body, having a short circuit is going to cause trouble. Trouble that you don't want or need. So how do you know if you have subluxation? Well, most of the time, people only find out they have subluxations when the subluxation is agitated or exacerbated. This is when pain comes on. But they don't realize that that subluxation has probably been there for years, just like a silent tooth cavity. Most of the time, the subluxation is silent without pain. It's in the background like a ticking time bomb. When body signals do occur, they often present as joint and muscle aches and pains, anywhere in the spine, neck, mid-back or low back, and pelvis. But commonly, headaches result, shoulder pains, pins and needles, and numbness. The main cause of subluxations are the combination of macro and micro traumas and emotional stress. But the problem is, most of my patients often think that they haven't had any injuries. It's only when we have a look at their x-ray that this is often proven false. They did have traumas. They were just so long ago that they forgot about them. Think back to your childhood. Do you really think you haven't had any falls, jars, or jolts over your lifetime? Of course you have. Some pretty significant, others not. In my experience, the injuries often take place when we're younger, during early childhood to the teenage years. Then most of us start to sit more and more, exercise and play less and less, and stress more and more. And this slowly cements the subluxations in place. However, if you don't have any obvious body signals, your best hint that you have subluxations is your lifestyle, and more specifically, the stresses in your lifestyle. That's those 3 T's we've been talking about. So how do you know if you have subluxation? The only way to truly know if you have subluxations is to get checked by a chiropractor. In my clinic, I need to do a thorough history, thorough spinal and postural assessment, functional assessments to determine your strength and flexibility, and this is often followed by an X-ray to get the complete picture of your spinal health and subluxation profile. So now, if I may, I'm going to briefly speak to those of you that have not been to a chiropractor before. Are you wondering about your spine and nervous system? How about your families or your kids? If you're like me, you're probably wondering what is going on inside of you right now. And if you are, the next steps for you are pretty easy. For those of you that have taken the time to watch my workshop and are interested in having your spine and nervous system checked for subluxations, I'm willing to offer you a 50% discount off your initial consultation. That is a $60 saving. All you have to do is make an appointment and mention this workshop. Just remember, only a chiropractor is trained to find and correct subluxations. Correcting subluxations will help to return normal motion and function to the spine, to reduce stress and interference to the nervous system and normalize nervous system input and communication. You should all know too that chiropractic is safe, effective, and now the largest drug-free approach to health in the world. Millions of people around the world get adjusted and have been doing so for over 100 years. Oh, and the third reason we have a health crisis: procrastination. I hope you have found my workshop helpful and found some ways you can help detox and recover from the holidays and improve your overall health and well-being. Next month, we'll be talking all about immunity, so keep an eye out.